Chicago's Wrigley Field looks untouched by time. Ivy on the walls, a hand-turned scoreboard, and not a jumbotron in sight. But what truly left it frozen in time, in an era when every other stadium changed, modernized, and grew? The answer isn't just nostalgia. Legal boundaries, family superstition, neighborhood uprisings, even wartime sacrifices locked Wrigley's fate in place, costing millions, stoking bitter feuds, and redefining what tradition means. So why do generations still fight to keep this strange time capsule alive? The proof begins with the one city block no owner could ever escape. April 23, 1914. On a tight city block in Chicago's Lakeview neighborhood, a new ballpark opened its gates to a crowd of just over 14,000. The sign above the entrance read, Weigman Park, named for Charles Weigman, the lunchroom magnate who commissioned its construction for his Chicago Whales of the upstart Federal League. Architect Zachary Taylor Davis, already known for Southside Park, was tasked with an unusual challenge: fit a full-size ball field, stands, and clubhouses into a parcel hemmed in on every side by city streets and rows of brick houses. Clark Street ran along the west, Addison along the south, Waveland to the north, and Sheffield to the east. There was no room for sprawling parking lots or grand plazas, just a single, sharply defined block mapped out in blueprints and Sanborn fire insurance maps that left no margin for error. From the start, the stadium was woven into the fabric of the neighborhood. Alleyways behind the outfield walls stayed open to residents, and the rooftops across Waveland and Sheffield looked right down onto left and right field. Early press reports marveled at the intimacy of the setting. Fans could hear the streetcars rattle past and smell bread baking from nearby kitchens. The ballpark's footprint was so precise that even minor expansions, like stretching the bleachers or adding a new concourse, would mean bumping up against someone's backyard or the city's property line. Blueprints from 1913 show how every entrance, every grandstand column was plotted to hug the lot's boundaries. Over time, the city's zoning records and aerial photographs confirmed what those first blueprints predicted. The park's core shape never budged. No alleys were closed, no homes raised for growth. Instead, Wrigley Field's original borders became a kind of invisible fence, quietly dictating what could and couldn't change for generations to come. In a city known for reinvention, this single block of grass and brick stood still, locked in place by the streets and lives that surrounded it. Wrigley Field's shape was never just a quirk of design. It was a constraint written into the city's very bones. The stadium's lot, a tight polygon carved from the Lakeview grid, pressed up against Clark, Addison, Waveland, and Sheffield. Unlike the sprawling suburban ballparks that would come decades later, there was no extra land for surface parking, no buffer zone for future wings or plazas. Every inch was accounted for in 1913, and every surrounding street was a public right-of-way, owned by the city, essential to neighborhood life. Attempts to push the park's boundaries ran straight into hard limits. City plat overlays from the 1920s and the 1930s show how proposals to add seating or widen concourses would have demanded the closure of entire streets or the demolition of rows of brick homes. Urban planners and city council minutes from those years are blunt. Not a single street was ever vacated for Wrigley's growth. The alleys behind the outfield stayed open for residents, and the city refused to reroute traffic or remove homes in the name of baseball. In contrast, newer parks like Dodger Stadium and Bud Busch Stadium were dropped onto open land where parking lots could swallow whole blocks, and future expansion was a matter of bulldozers and blueprints. Wrigley's reality was different. The park's footprint never grew because it simply could not. Even modest upgrades required delicate negotiation with city officials and neighbors. Every added row of seats meant a zoning battle. Every inch gained inside meant a compromise somewhere else. No parking garages ever appeared. No streets disappeared beneath new construction. The stadium's borders, set in the 19-teens, became a permanent outline, an invisible fence that kept the modern world at bay. For generations, the geometry of the block dictated the fate of the ballpark, shaping not only what could be built, but what could never be undone. William Wrigley Jr. saw baseball as something almost sacred, a public trust, not just a business. When he bought the Cubs in the early 1920s, he was determined to keep the experience simple and honest. Letters and press interviews from the period show him bristling at the thought of neon signs or garish billboards cluttering the outfield. In his view, the ballpark was a garden for the game, a place where the only spectacle should be on the field. Afternoon sunlight, green grass, and the sounds of the crowd were enough. His son, Philip K. Wrigley, inherited the team in 1932 and deepened that philosophy. He believed that tradition was more valuable than any new technology or marketing scheme. Philip K. Wrigley rejected proposals for illuminated advertising, telling reporters that fans came for baseball, not a carnival. Internal memos from the Wrigley archives reveal a consistent message: keep the park free of distractions, keep the game pure. No flashing ads, no electronic scoreboards, no night games. Wrigley's public statements in the 1940s and 1950s insisted that baseball belonged outdoors, in daylight, where families could watch without the glare of artificial lights. This was not just nostalgia, it was policy. When other owners rushed to install electric lights in the late 1930s and early 1940s, the Cubs held back. Even after purchasing a full set of light fixtures in 1941, Philip K. Wrigley refused to use them. Instead, he quietly donated the entire shipment, 165 tons of steel and wiring, to the federal government after Pearl Harbor. Wartime memos and newspaper stories made the gesture public, but private correspondence suggests another motive: a deep reluctance to tamper with the rhythms of day baseball. Wrigley's letters to city officials and league executives cited community harmony and the importance of keeping the neighborhood peaceful after dark. This ideal of stewardship shaped every decision. The park's famous manual scoreboard, installed in 1937, was kept hand-turned and free of blinking lights. The ivy was planted that same year, chosen for its beauty and its echo of classic English gardens. Proposals for roofed stands or luxury boxes were set aside. For the Wrigleys, modernization was less a sign of progress than a threat to the ballpark's soul. Their vision, written into press releases and internal policies, made Wrigley Field a living time capsule, a place where the past was not just remembered, but protected, inning after inning, year after year. In 1942, as America braced for the demands of World War II, a shipment of brand new light fixtures sat in storage beneath the stands at Wrigley Field. The Cubs had quietly prepared to join the rest of Major League Baseball in the era of night games. But after Pearl Harbor,